Welcome everyone to another tier list for Code Geass Lost Stories, the global version. This is for January 2024, and I'm going to be ranking all the pilots. And because we just had our first Nightmare Frame boss event, plus so many new pilots were added in this month, I've decided to once again change the tiers. So I will go through all those, and then we'll get started with ranking the pilots. So first we have is the S tier. These are the best pilots in the game. I named it Halloween Lelouch because I think Halloween Lelouch is still one of the best pilots in the game. Next we have is the A tier. These are solid pilots. Not the best in the game, but really close and just as useful as the best ones in the game, but they are not substitutes or niche use only, hence why I put them in the A tier. Then we have the B tier, which is solid substitutes. This is a tier for pilots that are not quite the best in the game, but they're still really good, and oftentimes you will use them if you don't have the best version of that pilot, whether it be a range attacker, melee attacker, defensive pilot, healer. So this tier is for those pilots. Next we have is the C tier. It's the okay. These are for pilots that are not the best, but they're not the worst. Many of them are only really good within their own faction, but it also encompasses other pilots that I couldn't find another place for, hence why I created the C tier. You'll find that many pilots in this tier, again, are not the worst, but they're kind of mad to me. Next we have is the D tier. This is arena mode. This one is next because arena mode is something that you do 3 times a day, so it's a very frequent occurrence. Not so much compared to, let's say, the daily quests or the challenge missions or the story stuff, but it's still quite frequent. So therefore, I decided to put this tier above others. And this tier contains pilots that I don't think are that great, or they are, I guess, decent, but their best use is in arena mode, and that's what this tier represents. Anyways, moving on, we have is the E tier, which is the boss battle event tier. This is just like arena mode, but instead it's for pilots that are not that great, but they're really good within the Nightmare Frame boss battle event. Next we have is the F tier. When we've gone through everything else, these pilots are they're not particularly that great, but in certain situations they could be useful, hence why they are in the niche use only. And finally we have the G tier, which is Tamaki. These are the worst pilots in the game, practically useless, and therefore belong in this tier. Okay, so now that we've gone over all the tiers, let's start ranking all the pilots. Now to save some time, I'm going to do the G tier and the F tier at one time because let's be honest, most of you probably don't care and you're more interested in the higher tiers. So let's do that right now. So starting with the G tier, we can start putting in different pilots like Charles belongs in there, Tohdoh belongs in there, Tamaki of course, and then we have the other, now they are Tamaki, he's actually not that terrible, Ashford Lelouch, he's not great at all, and then we have Sahina, there's Ogi, where's the ring to Ogi? I think he belongs in there, he's not good anymore, he probably never was. Here's Tohdoh. I think that's all of them. Oh, and Nulley. Nulley's really bad too. I thought she might be good, but no, she's pretty bad. I'd say high crap tier, but still crap. So I'll put it like this. So it'd be Nulley, Lelouch, then Tamaki, Charles at the very end there. And let's see, Asahina, also I guess somewhat high end, but still crap. And same with Ogi. That's all the crappy ones. Then for the niche use only, we have Milly, Euphemia, and Kaguya. Where is Kaguya? There she is. Kaguya is probably the worst of these. Oh, Bartley, he's also pretty bad. I believe that's all the niche use only. Oh yeah, and Sayako, I'll put her in niche use only because if you don't have any other good healers, which I can't understand how that could happen, but if it did, she could, I guess, substitute for them. That's why she's in niche use only, but pretty bad overall. Oh, Rivals, also crap. I'll put him slightly above Tamaki, but still, he's pretty bad. Okay, so now we've gone through the F and the G tier. Let's start actually ranking these pilots one at a time. Starting with Schneizel with the glasses, I'm going to put him in the E tier for the Nightmare Frame boss battle event only. He has the ability to reduce the speed of a pilot in his range when he's deployed. He also increases the attack power of everyone in range when he is deployed. Also reduces the cost to deploy Britannian units. The reason why he's in this tier is because increasing attack power during the Nightmare Frame boss event is something very powerful, and other than that, you usually don't need someone like Schneizel on your team. But in those cases, he's very useful. So there you go, Schneizel, E tier. Next we have is Suzaku. I will put him in the solid substitute section because he's a great substitute for other defensive pilots. The one that always comes to mind is the original Kallen, because this Suzaku also has relatively high melee stats for a defensive pilot. Obviously his abilities are inferior when compared to Kallen, hence why he is a substitute. Moving on, we have Schneizel. I'm going to put him, I guess, also in the E tier, but yeah, I'll say after the other Schneizel. He also excels in the Nightmare Frame boss event because he increased the attack power of all the Britannia units when deployed, and most of the time that's never needed, but in the Nightmare Frame boss event, it's extremely vital, if not crucial, which is why he belongs in this tier. Other than that though, this Schneizel is just not that great. Next is Clovis. I'm going to put him ahead of the Schneizels. I find his speed boost ability more useful than their attack boost. That's why he's there. Next we have is Diethard. Going to put him in the A tier. He's a fantastic cloaker, and if you don't have Halloween Lelouch, he's the next best thing. Sometimes he's better than Halloween Lelouch because his deployment cost is lower, which can make a difference every now and then. Next is Ashford Kallen. Gonna put her in the S tier, even though her deployment cost increase ability is worse than Jeremiah, but because she increases everyone's skill gauge to near 100% before they're deployed, it makes up for it. One of the best cost increasers on deployment in the game period, and that's why she is in the S tier. Next we have is Milly, Ashford Milly, rank 2. Gonna put her in the OK category. The thing about this Milly is that she's really powerful because she doesn't cost anything once fully upgraded. This is to deploy, of course. She also has a reduction in deployment cost for everyone in the Ashford faction and has decent stats. I put her in the OK category because there are better passive cost increasers in the game, and her best use now is in the Ashford faction or early on if you don't have anyone else to increase your cost. Other than that though, she's, well, as the name suggests, okay. Next we have is Shirley. Gonna put her in the A tier, probably, yeah, that's fine. I'll put her after Diethard. Shirley has really good balanced attack stats and a really good healing ability, plus the fact that she's with the Ashford faction, so that helps out as well. A really solid healer and still one of the best in the game for a rank 3 that's been out since the game's launch. Next we have is Cornelia. This is the athletic one. Gonna put her after Ashford Kallen, another cost increaser upon deployment. The problem with this Cornelia is that the cost increase is only 14 and the other effect is a blow away, which most of the time is not that useful, so definitely worse than Ashford Kallen. Next is Gino. I'm going to put him after Cornelia, but before Kallen. And this is due to the fact that he has balanced stats in health, defense, and of course his melee attack. He also combos very well with the Tristan, and while his cost is kinda high, he also produces a lot of cost to make up for it. Just one of the best solid all-around pilots in the game, and that's why he's in the S tier right above Cornelia, but worse than Kallen. He also reduces the deployment cost of himself and everyone else in the Knights of the Round faction, so that's another added bonus to his character. Next we have is Diethard. Gonna put him in the Nightmare Frame boss battle tier because normally his effect is pure garbage, but this one time slowing down you and the boss can come in handy every now and then. That's why he belongs in the E tier, otherwise it's pure garbage. Next we have is Ashford Milly, A tier. I'll put her after Cornelia, but before Gino. I think her cost reduction for everyone in the Ashford faction, including herself, is really good, plus the attack increase. This is the only healer in the game where I can excuse the fact that she doesn't have any healing ability or reducing the damage that any pilot would take, including herself. But normally, I don't let that type of thing pass. But for Milly, I make an exception because I think her other stats make up for it. Next we have is Nina. I'm going to put her in the OK tier after Milly. For the Ashford faction and in very desperate situations, Nina is quite useful, which is why I put her in the C tier. Other than that though, yeah, not that great. Next we have is Darlton. Gonna put him also in the C tier after Nina, but before Milly. He's got high durability but low range attack, and that's why he's in the OK category. Not the worst, but definitely not the best. Kind of a shame because he was really good early on, but now not so much. Next we have is C2. I'm going to put in the A tier. I'll have her after Diethard. I think cloaking is better than barriers right now, which is why I have it organized that way. If you disagree, obviously C2 would go before Diethard, but in my opinion she goes afterwards. afterwards. I find her barriers to be mostly unnecessary, which is why I don't use her that much, but I can understand why some would, so I think A tier is appropriate. Moving on, we have Bismarck, gonna put him in the A tier before Diethard. Highest melee attack in the game, also a very high deployment cost. If you can deal with that part though, he's really powerful and his abilities are excellent for killing bosses, so definitely A tier for the Giga Chad. Next is Ashford Lelouch. I'm gonna put him right here. And the reason why is because the stun ability is still really solid in the really hard missions or of course arena mode. The attack power is actually still pretty high for a strategy type pilot and he combos really well with Zero's Bull Rise, so all around just a very solid pilot and still A tier even after all this time since he came out. Next is Narita Jeremiah. I'm going to put him in arena mode. I think his abilities are best suited for that. He is not awful in normal situations, but his best use is taking out the opponent's setup by insta-killing the pilots. He's also good in the Nightmare Frame boss battle event for clearing out the first couple stages, but because the arena mode is higher tier, I think Narita Jeremiah belongs in there. Is the cost reduction great for everyone in the faction? Sure, but that won't come up that much. So for me, he belongs in the arena tier. Next we have is the other Jeremiah. I'm going to put him after Gino, but before Kallen. He is the second best cost increaser on deployment in the game, and that's why he belongs in the S tier right after Gino, but before Kallen. Next we have is Lelouch. Going to put him in the S tier right there. So now Kallen's not the best in the game, which we kind of already knew. Lelouch is still the best in the game because when you combine his cloak, high attack power, fast redeployment time, and attacking multiple enemies at once, you can't find too many other pilots in the game that can match that. That's why he's S tier and in my opinion still the best pilot in the game. Moving on, we have is Villetta. I'm going to put her in these solid substitutes right there because nowadays there are so many juggernauts with higher range attack that Villetta's 745 is not good enough anymore. It's kind of sad because it used to be, but now it's not, so therefore she belongs in the B tier. Still a great option to take out airships, and also if you're just starting out, she's still a really powerful range attacker. Moving on, we have is Lloyd. This is the rank 4 multi-tool. I'm going to put him in the Nightmare Frame boss battle, but I'll put him high in there. You could make the argument he could be higher because of his reduction in redeployment time, but his main effect to get the skill gauge to 100% is his best use, and only in the Nightmare Frame boss battle event will you have to do this quite often, so therefore, in my opinion, I think his best uses are within the Nightmare Frame boss event. As I said in my video reviewing him, his cost is kind of high for low durability and I guess decent stats. He's a very confusing pilot, but as a multi-tool, he's kind of useful, and I think the boss battle event is where he's most useful in. Next we have is Kewell. Gonna put him also in solid substitutes, probably after Suzaku is fine. Good for taking out airships, and that's about it. If you got no one else, you can use him. Next we have is Guilford. Gonna put him in the OK category. I'll say after Darlton and Nina, but before Milly. There are some times where boosting your defense is more important than boosting attack power, but those times are few and far between, and I wish Guilford just had better attack stats and boosts on attack power upon killing other enemies. The defense just seemed really lame, and this character just sucks, so I'm being very gentle with the OK tier. I'm tempted to go garbage, but we'll say OK tier for now. Next we have is Kewell, is the defensive one. I'll put him after Guilford, but before Milly. His defense abilities are not awful, but they're only one time only, which kind of sucks. But if you can get past that, again, they're not awful. He's a very okay pilot. In the Britannian faction, there are not too many defensive pilots, so if you need someone, Kewell's probably going to be your man, at least for a while. Next we have is Euphy, A tier. I'm going to put her above Milly, but before Gino. I think she's still the best healer in the game, both of her special effects and her really good stats. Still very squishy, but healers can't have everything, I guess, so S tier for sure. Next is Tamaki. Gonna put him in the OK. I'll put him after Nina. He's got pretty high attack power, but he's only really useful in the Black Knights because you have Raksha, Taizo, and Zero. Other than that, he's okay. Next we have is Zero C2, S tier of course. I'm gonna put her probably after Euphy, not after Euphy, Milly, but before Euphy. A really good passive cost increaser, high health, high defense. You guys know the drill. Still really good and will be until we get the new C2 with the Gwen. Moving on, we have Maid Shirley. I'm going to put her in the A tier, and I'll have her probably, I'll say after Diethard, but before Bismarck and Ashford Lelouch. Her healing ability is really solid. It's sometimes annoying to use, but generally speaking, it's very good. Still the best sub healer in the game, and it's great that you can keep withdrawing her and redeploying her to get the healing effect, as opposed to keeping her on the battlefield like most normal healers. So from that standpoint, she's very good. I also like her reduction in everyone's redeployment time. A very underrated but handy ability. Moving on, we have is Lloyd. Gonna put him in the okay tier, probably after, yeah, I'll say after Nina. No, I'll put him over here. And the reason why is because we have so many powerful members of the Special Corps that his cost reduction and attack boost are very useful right now, which is why I have him in this tier. Next we have is Defensive Guilford. I'll put him in the solid salutes, but I'll put him I guess I'll put him after Suzaku. I'm not happy about that, but I guess that works. He's like the original Kallen, but his immortality ability happens immediately as opposed to when you reach a certain amount of damage, which I guess is fine because you can't one-shot him, but also annoying because once the seconds pass, he's easy to kill. So I guess you gotta take your pick what you like more. I prefer Kallen's ability, but that's just me. Next we have is Naomi. Gonna put her in the C tier, probably after Nina and probably Tamaki as well. If you don't have any other healers for the Black Knight faction, Naomi is your gal. Otherwise, you have to use Nagisa, who's way better. But if you don't have Nagisa, then Naomi, like I said, is your gal. Moving on, we have Suzaku. Gonna put the A tier. I'll put him like top of the top A tier. A great passive cost increaser with low deployment cost and balanced melee stats. Well, melee and range. But he's not the best at what he does, which is why I have him in the A tier as opposed to someone like Gino, who's in the S tier. Still a really good pilot. Next we have is Taizo. I'm going to put him right after Diethard. Another great addition to the Black Knight faction. And while he only boosts the Black Knight faction, that speed increase is still very significant, and that's why he belongs in the A tier. Next we have is Cecile Croomy. Going to put her in the OK. I'll have her probably after most of these pilots because she has the ability to reduce the redeployment time, and that's more valuable than half these people. So that's why she belongs high in the OK tier, but we already have better options that have this ability. So next we have is Nagisa, also in the OK tier. I'll put her after Milly because the JLF got a huge boost in the recent banner, so she's actually better than she was before, especially now with the Gekkas. So still okay, right? But just like Milly, really good solid stats, no cost to deploy, and reduces the cost of everyone in the JLF faction. So pretty good stuff, and therefore she belongs in the C tier. Next we have is Shirley. Gonna put her in the Nightmare Frame boss battle tier because increasing attack power, like I said, is super crucial, and she does that for anyone in range, so therefore belongs in the boss battle tier. I will put her after Schneizel because her effect is generic, while his is only for the Britannian faction. Next we have is Suzaku. This is the latest one, I believe. Definitely S tier, but low S tier? I'll put him above Cornelia probably, and Milly too. Yeah, because his abilities are really powerful. I mean, he increases skill gauge by 100% upon deployment, has a fast redeployment time, and also boosts his attack power on deployment. So combined with the Lancelot, it's very deadly. He also gives himself a shield, which is kind of cool, and has high range and melee stats. Overall, a really solid pilot. I think his best use is in arena mode, but if you didn't have any other good range attackers, he could serve that role just as well. But I think the best use overall is to deploy him and attack the boss, or in arena mode to take out the opponent's positioned troops. Either way, this Suzaku is really good and definitely belongs in the S tier. Next is Kallen, rank 3 Kallen. Gonna put her as a solid salute. I'll probably put her after these two, and Guilford as well. Nah, I'll say before Guilford, but after Suzaku. This Kallen has pretty high attack power and the ability to boost it further, plus she goes really well with the Gurren Mark II, but she has high cost and doesn't do much else besides that, so I can't put her higher than a B tier, and as a substitute, you can use her instead of Cornelia, Bismarck, Tohdoh, or Shinkei. Moving on, we have Guilford, also a solid substitute for other great cost increasers. I will put him also after Suzaku. He's got pretty high defense and no cost if you fully upgrade him, which makes him really powerful. That's why he's in the B tier. Next I have is Tianzi. I'm going to put her in the OK tier. I don't like this pilot too much. Kind of disappointed with her, but I can't deny the fact that she is pretty good as a healer, but man, she supports one of the worst factions in the game, or I should say sub-factions, so she's definitely here. I'll put her, I guess, after Darlton. No, I'll put her, yeah, after Darlton, right, and before Lloyd. She's not that great right now. She will be in the future, but just not right now. Next is Chigisa. I'm going to put her A tier, but low A tier because she is a melee healer, which is kind of niche, but when you do need her, she's quite powerful. And she has a really nice ability to boost her skill gauge to 100%. and also, decent durability, but not the greatest. So A tier, but only because I can't deny the fact that she's really good at what she does, even if what she does is not always necessary. Next we have is Villetta. Look at that, back to back. I'll put her in the S tier, of course, and I'll have her above Suzaku. She can heal everyone in range. She gives herself a shield and has really high attack power, specifically range attack power. So from that standpoint, she's very powerful, and that's why she belongs in the S tier. Next we have is the original Kallen. Gonna put her high, probably, yeah, that's good. I'll put her before Ashford Kallen, but obviously, no, after Ashford Kallen, but before Halloween Lelouch. Her immortality ability combined for her high stats for a defensive pilot. Plus, when you factor in the Gurn Mark II, this is one of the best pilots in the game, period. Moving on, we have Zero Lelouch, gonna put him probably after C2, but before Euphy. Before Euphy, after Euphy, sorry, and before Gino. He's really good, but there are so many new pilots that have come out recently that make this Lelouch not as good as he used to be. He's still really powerful, still one of the best boss killers in the game, and one of the best supports for the Black Knight faction. Next we have is Summer Cecile, gonna put her, right here, that's fine. So before Diethard, after Taizo. She is a cost increaser, really good attack stats, and reduces the redeployment time of everyone. So when you combine those factors, she's really good. Hence why she is in the A tier. Next we have is Tohdoh, also A tier. I'm going to put him actually quite high because now that his Gekka is out, he's really good. This rank 3 Tohdoh plus that Gekka is incredible. Of course, Tohdoh has really high stats as a defensive pilot, not so much in the attack, but just high health and defense, and that Gekka makes him so much better, so therefore he belongs in the A tier. Next we have is Summer Kallen. This is the first one. We haven't gotten the second one yet, but this is the first one. I'll put her in the solid substitute, and then exactly in the spot here. She has low cost, but doesn't really have a good healing ability, just boosting the attack power of everyone in the swimsuit faction, which is okay, but not that great, hence why she belongs in the solid substitute if you don't have a good ground healer. Next we have is Bradley, gonna put him in the A tier. Probably, yeah, I guess I'll put him after Tohdoh, maybe? No, I'm just kidding. He's in South Substitute, my bad. I'm gonna put him after Guilford. I don't know what I was thinking. He's got really high tag power, but terrible durability. But if you don't have any other good attackers in the game, melee-wise, he's a good substitute for them. As long as he's killing people, he's doing well. When he's not, well, not so much. Next we have is Minami, a substitute. I'll put him in the way end of this though. If you don't have Villetta or Butler Lelouch or a good attacker in general, and you have to fight airships, Minami is your guy. Moving on, we have Rakshata, A tier. Gonna put her after Taizo, before Taizo, and after C2. Another really solid supporter for the Black Knight faction. The cost reduction plus attack increase upon deployment are still useful to this day, and that's why she belongs in the A tier. Next we have is Bedime Lelouch. Gonna put him in the C tier, probably. I'll put him above Cecile. I think in theory this pilot could be good, but in practice not so much. Next we have is Butler Lelouch. Gonna put him in the Solitude section, probably above Bradley. He's the next best thing after Villetta if you don't have anyone who does damage against airships. Plus he slows down other pilots after hitting them. The only problem with this Lelouch is that his attack power is kind of low, but he does have a low deployment cost, so the two kind of cancel each other out. Eventually that low attack power will get him pushed down a few tiers, but for now I still think he's in the B tier. Next we have is Senba, also a great solid substitute. I'll put him after Bradley, but before Butler Lelouch. As a defensive pilot, there's not too many better, and with the Gekka, he's even stronger than before, so definitely belongs in the B tier. Next we have is Lazy Witch C2, A tier, of course. Gonna put her, I'll say after Diethard, before Diethard rather, but after Cecile. Really good combination of attack and defense, and plus she combos really well with the Shenhu. Next we have is the Urabe, another solid substitute. I will put him after Kallen because I think him and the Gekka are a very powerful combination. Plus the JLF got a huge boost thanks to the recent banner, although you could argue that helps Kallen too, but I just think Urabe is now better. Next is Jeremiah. I'm going to put him in the OK tier, probably after Darlton, but before everyone else. In theory, increasing your cost every time you destroy enemy on your frame would be good, but in practice it never happens, so C tier. Next we have is C2. This is Summer C2, A tier for sure. Gonna put her, yeah, I'd say, yeah, that's fine. She's got really high range attack relatively, really good abilities. The only problem for her is she has high cost, and compared to other range attackers with equivalent cost, her attack power is not as high. But she does have, I believe, faster interval than most, so that kind of makes up for it. Good pilot all around. Next we have is Kallen, S tier. I'm going to put her after the other defensive Kallen. Both of these are very powerful. I like how this Kallen can boost the defense that everyone is deployed. She has high health and high defense. One of the best in the Ashford faction and one of the best defensive pilots in the game, period. Moving on, we have Milly, gonna put her in the boss battle event. I'll say right before Lloyd, but after Clovis. Her speed ability is better because it targets one pilot instead of a whole group, and it's a much stronger increase if you intend to take out the boss as fast as possible. So that's why Milly is in that tier. Next we have is Anya, S tier for sure, one of the highest range attackers in the game. I will put her probably, I'm going to put her actually before Suzaku or after Suzaku, but before Villetta, because Villetta I think is better with her overall secondary abilities, but Anya is still really powerful with her higher range attack, plus she's aid to Cloaker, which is always useful to have. Next we have is Kallen. This is the one that comes with the Gurn Mark II. Gonna put her in the OK category. I'll say after Jeremiah, I suppose. She's got high defense and high health, but her attack power is just too damn low. That's the problem with her. So she's okay for now. After the first year boost, she's a little better, but until then, kind of meh. I suppose use her if you got nothing else. At least her interval attack is pretty good. Next we have is Knotted, also okay. I kind of like her more than Kallen because of her ability to boost everyone, not the JLF, but the coder. That's it around. Kind of debatable, I suppose, but you know, I'll put her like between the two. That makes sense. Next we have is Monica. Solid substitute. I'll put her right after Guilford, but before Bradley. She cloaks herself, has high attack power, and fast redeployment time. Good stuff all around. Next we have is Dorothea. Obviously 9-frame boss battle event because just like Lloyd, she can increase the skill gauge to 100%. Well, actually, it's 50%, so it's not that great compared to a Lloyd. So I'll have her, I'd say probably, after Diethard, but before everyone else. She's not that great, but is useful in the Nightmare Frame boss event. Next we have is Asahina, definitely A tier. I'm going to put him right after Taizo, but before Cecile, because Cecile is good with basically every faction because of her secondary ability, whereas Asahina only boosts the Black Knights. It's a really good boost, don't get me wrong, but other than that, Cecile is better. But Asahina is still a very solid Nightmare Frame for the JLF and the Black Knights, and I think his cost is actually lower than Cecile's, so I guess it depends what you value more, but still, this Asahina is awesome and combos really well with his Gekka. Next we have is Shirley, A tier, a very solid healer. I'll put her after Chigisa, sorry, I was thinking something else there, but Chigisa and before Shirley. The problem with the Shirley, this one right here, is that she doesn't heal, only prevents damage, which I guess is okay. I like a combination of both, but she doesn't do that, so she's kind of low in the A tier. Next we have is Birthday Lelouch, gonna put him in the C tier, probably, I guess after Lloyd, I don't know. I got mixed feelings about this character. I think he's okay, that's why C tier. Pretty good in the Ashford faction challenges for sure, not much else though. Next we have is Nagisa, A tier of course. I'm gonna put her probably right after Taizo, but before Asahina. A really good pilot that supports the Black Knights and JLF, but also a really good healer in her own right. She also has balanced attack stats, so she's very versatile in that respect. So overall, really good healer and a really good pilot. Next we have is Tohdoh, S tier for sure. Gonna put him probably, that's good, after Euphy, but before Zero. His ability to boost the defense and attack everyone deployed is really powerful. I wish he did to himself, but it is what it is. He also has high melee attack and high health and defense, and combos really well with his Gekka. A very solid pilot, no doubt. Next is Shinkai, gonna put him in the A tier, probably, I'd say, I think he's worse than Cecile right now because, well, he does have balanced attack stats. He's focused mostly on evasion, not attack boosting. He's okay. He will be better later on, but I think this spot makes sense. You could argue higher, I'm not going to. Next is Xiao. I'm gonna put her in the E tier for the Nightmare Frame boss event because just like Shirley, she can also boost the attack power of one pilot. I think hers is a little better, so I'll put her after Shirley, but before Schneizel. I think Schneizel is better than her, but still not by much. Zhao in general is not that great, but she is good in this one situation, hence why E tier. And last, and certainly not least, is the Witch of Britannia herself, Cornelia Britannia, which I put in the S tier. And I'm going to put her, I'm going to put her after Kallen, but before Halloween Lelouch. These days, with that high melee attack power and the ability to boost the attack power everyone is deployed, including herself, is one of the deadliest combinations in the game. She's got really low interval of attack, and therefore, she's like one of the best attackers in the game, one of the best pilots in the game, period. So there you go, that is my tier list of all pilots in Code Geass Lost Stories global version for January 2024. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you want more videos like this, I recently ranked all the Nightmare Frames in Code Geass Lost Stories, and here's another awesome video as well to check out. Go watch those videos right now.